Did you know that what you eat can directly affect your memory and your sex drive? In today's video, we'll explore how food impacts brain health, libido, and of course, your quality of life. If you think that old age means the end of desire and vitality, think again. With small changes in eating, you can reconnect with your partner, improve your mental health, and rediscover pleasure in maturity. Today, I want to talk to you about something that is often left out, but that has a profound impact on our lives, especially as we get older. I'm talking about the relationship between sexual desire, memory, and food. It may seem curious, but these three things go hand in hand and greatly influence the quality of our life, whether in the physical, emotional, or even affective aspect. And it doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, 80, or older. There's always room to learn, rediscover, and nourish your body and mind so that your intimate life and brain health remain active, full, and meaningful. It is very common to associate old age with limitations and restrictions, including with regard to sexuality. But the truth is that desire doesn't have to disappear just because time has passed. In reality, it is the result of several factors: the emotional context, healthcare, the way we see our body, and as we will talk about today, even what we put on our plate. In fact, this point is crucial. Food is a pillar that supports not only our daily energy, but also the way our brain works, the regulation of hormones, and yes, the intensity of our sexual desire. You may be wondering, but why talk about it? Why do you care so much about desire and memory in old age? The answer is simple. Because life doesn't end at 60 or 70. On the contrary, it continues, and can continue with joy, with vitality, with moments of affection and intimacy, as striking as in any previous phase. And it is precisely so that we can enjoy this phase in the best possible way that we need to understand how some adjustments in diet can make a difference. It's that old saying, you are what you eat. But in addition to being what we eat, we also feel and think according to what we eat. The brain, this incredible machine, feeds directly on the nutrients we ingest. And the same goes for the hormones responsible for arousing sexual desire. Perhaps you still have some discomfort in talking about sex life and maturity. It is understandable because we live in a society that often places this subject as taboo, or thinks that intimate life is restricted to young people. But it doesn't have to be this way. Intimacy can and should be celebrated at all ages, including the third. The truth is that there is immense freedom in discovering new meanings for sexuality, and in understanding that the body can indeed feel pleasure, desire, and connection, regardless of the date that is on your identity document. And where does memory come into all this? Well, it is no coincidence that more and more studies associate good nutrition with improvement or preservation of cognitive functions. In practice, the same set of healthy habits that help keep your brain sharp is also responsible for keeping your hormones in balance. So, when we talk about nourishing the mind, we are almost always talking about nourishing the body so that it responds better to sexual stimuli, the production of hormones, and the availability for moments of affection, and intimacy. I really like to remind you that we are not talking about fancy solutions or restrictive and radical diets. Often, the most significant changes are the simplest ones. Reduce the consumption of ultra-processed foods, abuse fruits, vegetables, whole grains, include sources of healthy fats, such as omega-3 present in fish and flaxseed or chia seeds, and remember to drink enough water throughout the day. These are small attitudes, but they have a huge impact on our general health, and also on the way our body reacts to pleasure stimuli. Perhaps it helps to illustrate this with a story. Imagine a couple who spent years without much exchange of affection, who gradually drifted apart due to the pressures of everyday life and, later, due to the routine of retirement, body aches, lack of energy, and a feeling of discouragement. They begin to notice forgetfulness here and there, that difficulty remembering names or events. And when they realize it, they are leading a life without so much brilliance and without so much desire to seek something new, including in the intimate field. Then a health professional comes along who advises them to change some habits, introduce more fish in the week, less fried food, more salads and vegetables, drink anti-inflammatory teas, use turmeric as a seasoning, include more red fruits for breakfast. It may seem silly, but in a few weeks, that constant fatigue begins to subside. The mind becomes a little more alert, The physical disposition shows signs of improvement. And, as in a domino effect, there is more interest in activities for two, more conversation, more laughter, more desire to go for a walk, more vitality. Suddenly, the touch that was forgotten reappears. The caresses become more frequent. The desire shows up again. And it all starts with something as simple as a change in eating habits. I'm not saying that food is the cure for all ills, or that this process is fast. Often, it is necessary to seek medical help, follow up from a nutritionist, a psychologist, or sex therapist, especially if there are more delicate health issues. But the fact is that taking care of your diet is a fundamental step and, in addition to being simple, it can be very pleasurable. Eating well does not mean feeling like it or eating tasteless food. On the contrary, it means discovering new flavors, seasoning creatively, valuing natural ingredients, and realizing how much the body responds in a positive way. When we talk about memory, it is very common to associate old age with forgetfulness, or even diseases such as Alzheimer's. There is no formula to guarantee that we will never suffer from this type of problem. But we know that we can reduce risks by maintaining a diet routine rich in antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. That's where berries come in, which are great for the brain and artery health. That's where nuts, chestnuts, avocados come in, which provide good fats and contribute to the formation of hormones essential to the balance of the body.
It is in this context that turmeric, such a simple spice, can help fight inflammation, helping with brain health and even disposition for daily activities. Now, it is interesting to note that sexual desire, to a large extent, is influenced by what we feel, by our emotions, and also by the environment in which we live. If we are constantly stressed, anxious, or have health problems that we do not treat, it is likely that interest in intimate moments will drop a lot.
If our relationship with the body is one of rejection or shame, it can be difficult to indulge in pleasure. Hence the importance of looking at sexuality in a broader way, taking into account not only what happens under the sheets, but also what happens in the mind and soul. What you eat directly interferes with the production of neurotransmitters that influence mood and libido, such as dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. Quality protein-rich foods, such as fish and eggs, provide amino acids that are raw materials for the manufacture of these neurotransmitters. Likewise, complex carbohydrates, such as those present in whole grains, help to maintain more stable energy levels and not suffer those sugar spikes that leave the body tired and unwilling. When we learn to make more balanced choices, we start to offer the brain and the rest of the body the necessary ingredients for everything to work in harmony. An important point is moderation in everything. We don't need to demonize foods such as sweets or fried foods, but it is essential that they are not the basis of our diet. If we consume too much sugar, for example, we may be favoring inflammatory processes, which in the long term affect the nervous system and even cardiovascular health. For sexuality, cardiovascular health is essential, as we are talking about blood vessels that need to be unobstructed and healthy for there to be good circulation, and consequently, a satisfying intimate life. So, taking care of the heart is not only a matter of avoiding heart attack and stroke, but also of promoting a better sexual response. Many people in old age think that because they no longer feel desire, it is not worth investing in it. But perhaps desire is dormant, not extinguished. And to wake it up, it is necessary to look inside and understand what factors may be contributing to it remaining hidden. Is it just age? Is there any medication that reduces libido? Is it a sedentary lifestyle? Is it the discouragement of feeling pain or thinking that the body is no longer attractive? Is there a history of sexual repression or inhibition that has never been worked on? When we ask ourselves these questions and start looking for answers, we may discover that there is a lot to be done, and a part of it goes through food, but is not restricted to it. However, eating well often opens doors to other positive changes in life. It is also very important to talk about communication between the couple, for those who are in a relationship. There is no point in introducing nutrient-rich foods if there is no dialogue, mutual respect, listening and understanding of each other's limitations. Intimacy is built on an emotional basis, trust, and the ability to talk about what bothers and what pleases. If one partner is in pain or is afraid of not being able to perform well, it is necessary to communicate this to the other. When there is openness to talk, it is easier to seek solutions together, either by modifying the eating routine, by doing therapies, or even by adjusting the context in which intimate moments take place. Another aspect that we need to consider is physical exercise. As much as we are focused on food, it is worth remembering that the body benefits a lot when we maintain some level of physical activity. Daily walks, stretching, water aerobics, ballroom dancing, or any other modality that is pleasurable for those who practice. Exercise helps oxygenate the brain, favors blood circulation, strengthens muscle tone, and of course, releases endorphins, which have everything to do with well-being and disposition. For those looking to improve sexual health in old age, maintaining a regular exercise routine can be a great differential, added to a good diet and, if necessary, monitoring by health professionals. But how to fit all this into a daily life that, in many cases, is already full of commitments or physical limitations? The tip is to start small and add layers of change. Instead of trying to rework your entire diet at once, focus on 1 or 2 changes a week. For example, in the first week, you can introduce fish twice a week and reduce the consumption of sausages and soft drinks a little. The following week, add berries to breakfast or afternoon snacks. Then, work on replacing some sources of refined carbohydrates with whole grains, such as wholemeal bread or brown rice. And so on, always testing, experimenting with new spices, learning how to make tasty dishes, and opening up to know one's own palate. If the opportunity arises to cook together with your partner or family, even better. This moment of preparing meals can become a shared activity, which generates approximation and complicity. When food comes loaded with affection, it tends to be even tastier, and the environment is more conducive to a good conversation, maybe even fun memories or conversations about unfulfilled dreams. All this, added together, helps to create a climate of harmony that favors both mental and sexual health. For those who live alone or feel isolated, it is worth looking for coexistence groups, activities in community centers, or the help of professionals who can guide. It may seem difficult at first, but there are ways to make these changes safely and gradually. The important thing is not to close yourself off to the topic, not to isolate yourself, and above all, not to fall into the belief that life has to be just like that, without desire, without pleasure, without good memory. There is always something we can do to improve our quality of life and rescue the shine that, at some point, may have been lost along the way. And let's not forget a fundamental thing: hydration. It is very common that, in old age, people drink less water than necessary. Thirst decreases or simply forgets to drink liquids. But water is essential for virtually every process in the body, including optimal brain function and lubrication of mucous membranes. Good hydration can even help with physical disposition, skin elasticity, and maintaining adequate levels of fluids in the organs. This can make a difference in comfort and pleasure during intimate moments, in addition to helping regulate body temperature and transport nutrients throughout the body. A lot of people ask if there are aphrodisiac foods, those that magically ignite desire in anyone. In fact, there is no proof that there is a food capable of miraculously guaranteeing an increase in libido. What exists are foods that, due to their composition of nutrients, contribute to the improvement of circulation, hormonal balance, and general well-being, which can indeed reflect positively on our sexual energy. So, if you hear about some superfood that will magically solve all your problems, you can be suspicious. The most important thing is to have a balanced diet that is consistent with the body's needs. Sometimes it is also good to remember that certain supplements can help, but only if there is a real need and prescription from a doctor or nutritionist. There is no point in taking a lot of vitamins if the body does not need them or if the problem is elsewhere, such as a lack of dialogue in the relationship, unresolved psychological issues, or extreme sedentary lifestyle. Treatment, if any, must always be global, looking at the human being as a whole and not just at a part of the body or a single symptom. Within the diet, in addition to fish rich in omega-3, we can highlight other interesting foods. Pumpkin seeds, for example, are sources of zinc, a mineral associated with the production of sex hormones and the proper functioning of the immune system. Nuts like almonds, hazelnuts, and Brazil nuts can provide healthy fats and vitamins that support energy production. Dark leafy vegetables, such as spinach and kale, are rich in magnesium, another mineral important for muscle relaxation and nerve health. In turn, oats are a source of fiber and help keep blood sugar levels stable, avoiding sudden peaks and drops in energy, which contributes to mood throughout the day. No less relevant is the issue of good humor and self-esteem. When we eat well, we are more likely to keep our mood stable and face everyday life with more positivity. This reflects on our mental state and the way we deal with our own image, which directly impacts the way we experience sexuality. Someone who feels good about themselves is more likely to show affection, to seek touch, to experience novelties in their intimate life. And it all starts, many times, with the basic care of offering the body and mind the right fuel. If we stop to think about it, old age can be an extremely rich period in which the demands of work have decreased. Children are usually raised, and there may be more time to enjoy simple things such as cooking, walking, dating, gardening, or reading a good book. Instead of seeing this phase as closure, it is possible to see it as an opportunity to put into practice dreams that have been shelved. And of course, remember that pleasure has no age limit. Love, feeling desire, and enjoying moments of intimacy are things that can, and should, be experienced at any stage of life, in a safe and healthy way. For those who are watching and feeling motivated to take initiatives, it is always good to keep in mind that each organism is unique. What works for one person may not have the same effect for another. Therefore, it is important to listen to the body's signals and, if possible, talk to a health professional who understands the particularities of maturity. A blood test can identify potential vitamin and mineral deficiencies. A cardiological checkup is essential before starting more intense physical activities. And talking about your sex life with a specialized professional should not be a reason for shame, but for taking care of yourself. Often, there are medical issues involved. Men can go through significant hormonal changes, just as women go through changes in menopause, which can lead to vaginal dryness or hot flashes, for example. It is essential to know that there are therapies that can minimize these discomforts, while the right diet supports the body to adapt better to each change. What you can't do is stop talking about it, pretend it doesn't exist, or that it doesn't matter. It does matter, and a lot. Another thing that enriches this phase is having leisure time that helps the mind stay active. Reading, doing crossword puzzles, seeking new learning, talking to friends, traveling, learning to play a musical instrument, or attending dance groups. All this stimulates the brain, improves self-confidence, and, in addition, can expand the social circle, opening doors to new possibilities for relationships and effective exchanges. When we are happy and fulfilled in our activities, it is easier to nurture the desire for an active, intimate, and effective life. If at some point you feel insecure, thinking that you are no longer the same or that you can't keep up, remember that each phase of life has its beauties and challenges. It is not necessary to try to reproduce the energy you had at the age of 20, but to discover what makes sense today, in the current reality of the body and mind. A slower touch, a moment of intimacy, focused on complicity and affection, can be extremely pleasurable, perhaps even deeper than in previous phases, precisely because of the maturity acquired over time. At the same time, it is very good to be aware that if there are physiological issues getting in the way, such as chronic pain, joint problems, or lack of mobility, it is fully possible to adapt the situations so that pleasure continues to be achieved with less discomfort. This is where creativity and the search for information from professionals come in, who can suggest more comfortable positions or advise on suitable lubricants, for example. Thus, intimate life continues to be rich and safe, respecting the rhythm of each person. All of this is closely linked to the notion of self-care. When we take care of our bodies through a balanced diet, when we try to keep our minds active and work on our self-esteem, we naturally become more open to affection. The message that the body receives is that we want the best for ourselves, and this, little by little, is reflected in more energy and more desire to share moments with someone, or even to feel good alone, if there is no partner. The important thing is that sexuality can take on different formats and meanings, but pleasure and well-being are still possible. For those who are just starting to reflect on these possibilities, I suggest paying attention to what you eat in the coming days and the sensations that arise. Do you feel sleepy after a very heavy meal? Do you notice more disposition when you eat lighter, with a greater presence of vegetables and fruits? See if it affects your mood, if it influences your thoughts, if it gives you more or less energy for the day's tasks. This type of observation is essential to understand how each food impacts your body and to make better choices in the future. It is also worth maintaining a constant dialogue with loved ones. Talk about how you feel, ask how they feel, exchange ideas about new recipes, maybe schedule a lunch or dinner together. Social life is a powerful nutrient for the mind, and when the mind is well, it is easier for desire to flourish. Even those who are not interested in a romantic or sexual relationship can benefit greatly from feeling cognitively well and emotionally balanced. After all, quality of life does not depend only on having an intimate life, but on a set of factors that make us feel alive and motivated with each new day. Often, when we talk about the elderly, we hear the word resumption. It is a period in which one can resume hobbies, resume abandoned plans, and, why not, resume the flame of intimacy. If the body needs more care, if the memory is no longer so impeccable, that doesn't mean we can't create new ways to feel pleasure, to express love and desire. Through proper nutrition, a healthier lifestyle, and an open attitude, we can discover that maturity is a plate full of opportunities for those who allow themselves to experiment. And of course, never stop seeking professional help if you notice that there is something that is not going well, whether physically or emotionally. If the discouragement is very great, if there is intense pain or depression, or if the memory difficulty is very pronounced, it is important to consult doctors and specialists. There is no shame in that. On the contrary, it is an act of courage and self-care to recognize that we need help. And often, seemingly unsolvable problems can be alleviated or even solved with proper treatment. In this context, a balanced diet and physical activity are powerful allies, but they do not replace professional evaluation when necessary. In the end, what remains as a message is that sexual health does begin in the mind, and that the mind begins at the table. When we bring together knowledge, body care, emotional support, willingness to dialogue, and nutritious food, we create the perfect environment for desire and memory to remain alive and full of vitality. It is a continuous process, which requires patience and perseverance, but which brings very rewarding results in terms of well-being, self-esteem, energy, and personal fulfillment. So, if you were touched by this conversation, if you have someone who could benefit from this information, share this content. Spreading knowledge is a way to practice empathy, to show people that they are not alone and that they can make choices that transform the way they live maturity. And if you want to continue this journey, leave your comment, tell us your experience or your questions. Together, we can build a welcoming space to talk about issues that, for a long time, have been hidden. Life doesn't stop after 60. Neither love, nor desire, nor the desire to learn new things. May we all, at every stage of our existence, celebrate what we feel, what we remember, what we wish for, and what we can still accomplish. May each meal be a care for the body and an invitation to vitality. Let every conversation be an opportunity to get closer to the other and to yourself. And that pleasure, in all its forms, can be seen as something natural, healthy, beautiful, and worthy of being lived fully, whether at 20 or 80 years old. Thank you for being here and for listening to me so far. I wish you to be inspired to look differently at your diet, your routine, your possibilities of pleasure and personal satisfaction. Whatever your age, you deserve to discover or rediscover the best that life has to offer, and it's never too late to start.